all stand? Please be seated.
Can you hear me, Mr. Ridsdale?
Yes, I can.
Please be seated.
We were talking about the time that you became an assistant priest at Warrnambool. And can I ask you to turn to page 17 of that document that we've been talking about? You got page 17?
Yes, I have.
Now, do you see about halfway down, the first word is Warrnambool? You see that?
Yeah, yes.
And then just before that, you were asked that whether your time at Warrnambool, whether there would be only isolated incidents in your career or going on all the time. And then your answer starts with, well, sometimes. You see that?
Well, yes, I see that.
Can you just read that paragraph until the end of the page, please?
Well, sometimes it would go on for a while, maybe with one lad over a period of some months, just on and off. And then you had a time when I was free of the problem. Warrnambool was probably the first place that I tried to get some help or realised that I needed help. And I was out at the mental institution near Brierley, and part of my job was to go out to Brierley and take communion out, and probably had mass out there. And I remember one day there was a psychiatrist or psychologist that I had met a couple of times, and I remember saying to him once, could I ask you a question? I want to talk about a problem. And I said something to the effect that I think I might be homosexual. And I can clearly remember his question, do you dream about having sex with men? And I said no. And he said, when you have got no problems, you're okay. And rather than follow it up then with, well, what about kids? I just let it go. But the first time I can remember having the guts to say anything.
Do you remember the name of that psychiatrist or psychologist?
No, I wouldn't have a clue.
Was it only on one occasion that you saw that person?
Well, it was only on the one occasion that I spoke to him about that, but he's possibly a person that on my visits there I would have met and said hello to, but it's the only time I had a conversation with him that I remember.
Can I ask you to look at tab 7 of that folder in front of you, Mr. Ridsdale? Mr. Ridsdale, the Victorian Police applied for a search warrant for your hospital records at Warrnambool District Base Hospital. And
right.
These are the documents which they found. Does your version have typed words or handwritten?
No, handwritten.
Now, from this document, it appears that you attended a psychologist, or probably a psychiatrist, on 3 occasions in 1971, the 29th of November, the 18th of December and the 29th of December 1971. Now, does that help you recall going to the hospital for this purpose?
No, not at all.
This seems to be separate occasions from speaking to the person you've just given evidence about.
Yes.
And your schooling is first described, and then your symptoms are described as depression, anxiety, tension, and that your voice fails you at times. Now, do you remember having those conditions in 1970?
I remember sometimes over a few years I had problems with speech.
The doctor's notes also refer you as lonely and very unhappy, and this is in your time at Warrnambool.
Yes.
Do you remember feeling that?
I don't know.
And then goes on to say, not happy at presbytery, no loneliness, warmth, nor companionship, which presumably should read loneliness, warmth, and no warmth or companionship. Do you remember experiencing that at Warrnambool?
No, I remember that it was a very cold, unfriendly place, and the only friendship I had there, I think, was with, and I don't know for how long at the time that I was there, but it was with Brendan Davey, who was there working with me at the same time.
You see that what appears to have been prescribed for you was Valium and Librium, as well as relaxation therapy.
Yes.
Does that help you recall what you did at Warrnambool in terms of taking medication and doing therapy?
No, I can't remember any of this.
Now, if you go to the last entry, which is the 19th of December 1971,
29th.
29th is the last entry.
Yes.
It says up and down, depending on the situation at the presbytery, expects to be moved by the end of January. Now, the situation at the presbytery, was that a reference to you feeling lonely and a lack of warmth and companionship?
I think it would probably be more the dictatorial stand of the parish priest and a lack of cooperation and working with the assistant priests.
Who was the parish priest?
Monsignor Fiscalini.
And one of the assistant priests was Brendan Davey?
Yes, but I don't know for how long we were there together, whether it was the full 2 or 3 years or just a part of it.
So you understood that you were at Warrnambool for the time that assistant priests were usually at parishes?
Yeah, for the 3 years.
Did you ask to be moved?
That's what would have happened, but evidently I asked to be moved, and the reference to January is because, as a rule, all appointments were made at the end of January.
Now,
So because I'd asked for a change, I was just hoping, I suppose, that change would come at the end of January.
do you remember now asking for a change?
No, I don't, but I could believe that it would happen.
Now, you were appointed at the end of January in 1972 to Ballarat East. Remember that?
From Warrnambool to Ballarat East.
Yeah.
Are we back to the other document now, Miss?
Not at the moment. Do you remember going
Right.
from Warrnambool to assistant priest at Ballarat East Parish?
Well, yes, I can remember being in Ballarat East.
When you were at Ballarat East, you were chaplain of the St. Alypius Christian Brothers Primary School?
I don't know whether I was chaplain or not.
You were a parish priest, an assistant parish priest?
I was an assistant.
Where did you live as an assistant parish priest?
In the presbytery with whoever else was there at the time.
Now this is 1972 to 1974. Who else was living at the presbytery when you were living there?
I have no idea. I can't remember any of the priests who were there with me at the time.
Who was the parish priest at the time? Do you remember that?
I can't remember that. No, I can't. But the document did say that I went to talk to the Vicar General about a move, and he then took me to Ballarat East where he was, but I can't remember who the Vicar General was. I can't remember who the parish priest was.
Other than as chaplain at the primary school, what other work did you do while you were at Ballarat East?
I don't think I was chaplain at the primary school. I think I was chaplain over at across the road at the Mercy Sisters of Mercy convent.
Well, you were chaplain either at the convent or the primary school. That's right?
Yeah, the sisters didn't run the primary school, the boys' primary school.
No, I understand.
The Christian brothers ran that one. I'm not sure, but I think I was chaplain over at the Convent of Mercy and their school.
Now, I think the Convent of Mercy ran the girls' school and the Christian Brothers ran the boys' school.
That would have been right, yes.
And you think you're at the girls' school, not the boys' school?
I think so.
At the boys' school, which was a Christian Brothers school, Christian Brothers taught the children. You knew that?
Yes.
Did you have anything to do with the Christian Brothers who were teaching at the primary school in the 2 or so years you were at Ballarat East?
I probably would have, but I don't remember anything specific about it.
Generally, did the Christian Brothers who were working in a parish have social times with the priests who were in the parish?
No, I don't think so. They lived a life of their own, and they came down from St Patrick's College, taught at the school, then went back to St Patrick's College.
You didn't have a meal with any of them from time to time?
I don't remember ever having a meal with them.
With the
I mean, it could have happened, but I've got no recollection of it.
so your meals generally were with those who lived in the presbytery with you?
Yes.
At the presbytery would have been the parish priest?
The parish priest, and for a parish that size, I think there probably would have been one other assistant.
One or two?
Well, there could be one or two, but there would have been at least one other assistant.
Now, George Pell lived at the presbytery at the Ballarat East Parish while you were there, didn't he, Mr Ridsdale?
Well, I've been told that, but I can't remember actually being there with George.
You don't?
I can't remember him in the house.
If the record showed that he was resident at the presbytery at the time, you'd accept that, wouldn't you, Mr Ridsdale?
Oh yes, certainly, yes.
When did you first meet George Pell?
I don't know, I can't remember when I first met him.
Did you meet him when he was a father, that is Father Pell?
I don't know, I never had much to do with him.
When you say you didn't have much to do with him, it suggests that in fact you did at some stage meet him.
Well, yes, I would have met him. He was a Ballarat born and bred man, and although I think he was some years behind me in priesthood, and I think he did all his studies overseas, I'm not sure, but I wouldn't have had occasion to meet him unless at meetings, at clergy meetings or retreats.
At some stage, Mr. Ridsdale, you had formed a sufficient friendship with then Father Pell to ask him to accompany you to court when you were facing charges relating to child sexual abuse. Isn't that right?
No, it was the barrister who suggested George Pell.
But you must have felt a sufficient relationship with him to be able to ask him to accompany you to court.
Yes, I felt comfortable with that.
So what dealings had you had with Father Pell, as he was when you were at St Alypius, to enable you to feel comfortable with him accompanying you to court in the early 90s?
I don't know, I can't remember having any dealings with George at all.
Well, on what basis did you feel comfortable asking him to come to court if you hadn't had any dealings with him?
Well, you're talking of two different periods of time. 1994 was it? I went to court. 1993, and I must have had different dealings with George Pell at meetings or at work in the diocese. That at that stage I was happy enough. The barrister was looking for people who might come and speak on my behalf, and George Pell was one of the people that he suggested.
And did you ask then Father Pell to speak on your behalf?
This is my memory of it. Did I ask him?
Yes.
No, I think it was the barrister who did all that.
Well, you must have had a conversation with him to enable him to be in the presence of the barrister, to be asked by the barrister, mustn't you?
No.
Well, how did he do
I
that?
dealt with the barrister, and the barrister dealt with anyone he thought might come along to the court and say, put in some good words for me.
Did you suggest to the barrister that George Pell might be approached to put in a good word for you?
I don't remember, but I don't think so. I think it was
The barrister that George Pell might be approached to put in a good word for you. You have been photographed actually approaching the court with Father Pell as he then...
looking for different people.
You have been photographed actually approaching the court with Father Pell as he then was. You've seen that photograph?
Yes, that's right. I was living at St Francis Monastery in the city, and George came to the, as far as I remember, Your Honour, he came to the St Francis Monastery and walked up to the magistrate's court in the words we had on the way to the court.
Well, perhaps so, but how long is the walk to the court?
10 minutes.
Right, and you chatted to each other along the way, I assume.
Yeah, we would have.
Yeah. And did you ask Father Pell what he might be able to say on your behalf?
No, I didn't.
What did you think he was going to say on your behalf?
I don't know. I think we were clutching at straws, really.
Well, what did you have in mind might be revealed by the straws? What did you think Father Pell's role was to be?
Well, I don't know what benefit anyone coming to speak on my behalf, what benefit it would have been to me or to my cause or to my hearing or sentence. But the barrister said we needed some people to come along and support me.
And support you. You've said previously speak on your behalf.
Yes, yeah.
You had in mind that support would come from speaking on your behalf. Is that how we should understand?
Yeah, but all they could say was that, as far as they know, that I've done some good in the past or whatever. I don't see it as having a very big significance really in court proceedings.
Did other people come to court to support you?
I can't remember. I think there was one other who was the barrister asked, and I think that was one of the Blessed Sacrament fathers, because I was living at their house for the 12 months. But I don't think one of them came to court. I can't remember who was at court. I know one of my sisters was there, but I can't remember anyone else.
Did you discuss with Father Pell that morning the offences that you had committed?
No, I don't think we discussed them, but they were public anyway, so he would have known.
They were public because you'd already pleaded guilty to them, was that right?
I'd been charged, yes.
Yeah, in a court. You'd been to court previously.
No, I hadn't. No, this was the first occasion, I think, wasn't it?
Right.
Wasn't this the first occasion?
Well, I'm not sure, Miss
In the
Vanessa may know.
magistrates,
Yeah.
I think in the magistrates court in 1993, before I had the short jail sentence, I think that's the time we're talking about. So I don't think I'd even pleaded at that stage.
But as far as you were concerned, did Father Pell know that you were going to plead guilty?
I don't know whether he knew that or not.
You, in going to court that day, you knew you were going to plead guilty, didn't you?
Probably, I can't remember really, but that's been my stance all along, to plead guilty, and I suppose that's where it started.
Right. Now,
I can't remember that court hearing, except that all I remember is my sister was sitting behind me, and I can't remember the magistrate or the rest of the court proceedings.
did Father Pell have anything to say in the court that day?
I don't think he did, and I think from newspaper reports, I've read that he accompanied me but didn't speak. I think that's true, but
Were you?
I can't remember anyone speaking on my behalf.
Were you? The barrister spoke to Father, then Auxiliary Bishop Pell, about what the court case was about and what he wanted the bishop to say?
I don't know.
Well, did you have any discussion with then Bishop Pell about what you wanted him to say?
No, I didn't.
So you say that the only discussions that anyone had with then Bishop Pell about talking in favour of you at the court case was your barrister?
That's right.
You had no
I
discussion?
left all that sort of stuff up to the barrister, to the legal team, because I just didn't know really what was going on.
Well, let's come back to the 70s. Mr. Ridsdale, we'll deal later with what happened during the court process. Now, you don't now recall who lived with you at the presbytery at St. Olympius?
No, I can't for the life of me remember who was there.
Now, you offended while you were in Ballarat East, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Did it come to your attention that anyone in the parish knew or suspected about your offending?
No, I don't think so.
Were there any rumours swirling about that came to your attention?
No.
Now, by this stage in Ballarat East in the early 70s, you'd established a pattern in relation to offending, hadn't you?
By then I would have, yes.
You generally befriended families where perhaps they were poor?
I don't think that that's necessarily true.
Well,
I
perhaps
mean, it's obvious now to me that a pattern would have been, or a way of seeking victims would have been to look for the vulnerable or to recognise the vulnerable, but not always vulnerable ones, poor ones.
when you were before the courts in 1993 and 1994, do you remember being asked to speak with a psychiatrist who was expected would be able to give evidence about your offending and who you were to help the court sentence you?
Yes, I went to see, was it
Mr. Joplin and Professor Ball?
Joplin, yes, Ian Joplin, yes.
And you also saw Professor Ball, didn't you?
Yeah, I believe I did. I can't remember that, but I've been told that I went to see Richard Ball, was it?
Yes, yes.
And did some testing.
He did. Can I ask you to have a look at tab 89 in the bundle before you? Now that's a report by Professor Ball to your lawyers at the time. Have you seen this before?
This document?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Well, in it, Professor Ball says that he interviewed you on 3 occasions in early May 1993.
Right.
Well, in it, Professor Ball says that he interviewed you on 3 occasions in early May 1993, your usual pattern. It's the last paragraph. And I'll read it for you, Mr. Ridsdale.
All right.
Professor Ball says, and I quote, "It is very clear that his subsequent career in parish work indicated that in each of the parishes to which he was appointed, there was a group of 5 or more children with whom he had close and ongoing relationship, plus another casual contacts. His usual pattern was to become involved in 1 or 2 families, often with an absent father, develop close relationships with the children, which then merged into the sexual in the context of a variety of opportunities within the presbytery, on various outings and camps, etc. The targets were predominantly pre-pubertal or early pubertal boys." Now, do you accept that is a fair description of your pattern?
Yes, I think so.
Now, you were at Ballarat East or St Alipius Parish for about 3 years as the assistant priest and the chaplain.
Right.
That would be consistent with the usual practice as you understood of assistant priests being appointed for 3 years.
That's right.
Now, in the September 1973, you applied to the consultors for a position as parish priest in Port Fairy because that had become vacant. Do you remember doing that?
No, I don't.
Perhaps if you can have a look at tab 9 in the bundle that's in front of you. Now these are minutes of the consultors of September 1973. Have you seen consultor minutes before?
No, I have never.
Well, can you assume from me that that is what this document is?
Oh yes, yeah, I've got no doubt about that.
Now you see who's present. You've got Bishop Mulcairns,
Right.
Monsignor McInerney,
Yes.
Monsignor O'Brien, Monsignor McMahon. Now, did you know any of
Yes.
those other than the bishop?
Yes, I knew all of those.
And you'd worked with them at some time or another before 73?
No, I'd worked with Monsignor McMahon, I think it was. I think he was, not sure, but I think he was in, no, I'm mixed up there. Monsignor O'Keefe, I'm thinking of, was in Swan Hill when I was there. Fiscalini was in Warrnambool when I was there.
Now, you'd worked with Monsignor Fiscalini not happily before, had you?
That's right, yes.
Now, there's also the very Reverend J.F. Madden, who was the Vicar General.
Madden, yes.
Was that Frank Madden?
Frank Madden,
Was he someone you were friendly with,
yes.
as at this time, 73?
I don't know, going back to then.
Well, he was the Vicar
I
General.
don't know whether I don't know where he was or whether I would have had much to do with Frank in those days, except perhaps on committees or meetings.
Well, we'll come back to Frank Madden later. Do you see there's also the Reverend Kay Arundel?
Kevin Arundel, yes.
He was a friend of yours, wasn't he?
No, I'd be more friendly towards Dan, I think, Dan Arundel.
Thank you.
I would have had more to do with Dan Arundel because he was assistant priest at, was it Mildura or Swan Hill? Mildura, I think, when I was there.
And they were brothers?
Yes, yes.
Now, do you see further down the page, there's reference to correspondence, and it says a letter from you applying for position as parish priest in Port Fairy.
Right.
Now,
I don't remember applying for that, but
you applying for position as parish priest in Port Fairy.
Right.
Now, hadn't you?
Yes.
And was this the first occasion that you were applying for a position as parish priest?
Yes, it would have been. I think I said before that positions coming up would be advertised and anyone interested invited to put in an application to go to that parish. That's what I would have done.
Well, if you turn over the page, Mr. Ridsdale, you'll see there that at that meeting it's recorded that you were appointed as a parish priest to Apollo Bay.
Oh, yes, yes.
So you didn't get the parish you wanted, but you did, in fact, get another parish.
Yes.
Do you remember how that came about?
What do you mean, how it came about?
How it came about that you applied for Port Fairy and you got Apollo Bay?
No, you have to ask the consultants that. We don't know what goes on at consultants' meetings.
You weren't told?
No, don't always don't always get what you apply for, and you're not always told why you get it or why you don't get it.
Now, you offended while you were at Apollo Bay, didn't you?
Yes.
Can I ask you to look again at the transcript of your interview behind tab 107? Now, this is at page 25. In fact, turn first to page 20. Now, at the bottom of that page, you were asked...
Oh, 20. 20?
Yes.
Oh, yes, sorry.
No, that's fine. Have you got that?
Yes, I have now.
Now, you were asked whether Apollo Bay was your first parish, and it was as parish priest.
Yes.
And then you were asked whether that was because you were held in good esteem, and you said no, it's just a question of seniority.
Yes, that's right.
Now, you'd been an assistant priest at this stage for about 13 or 14 years.
Yes.
Was that about the usual time that you became a priest after 13 or 14 years?
Yes, we had to wait. It's like, I suppose, not climbing up the ladder, but it was an order. It's like, I suppose, not climbing up the ladder, but we worked the way up, and after a certain number of years, or as parishes became vacant and the assistant priest who was next in line for a parish would be offered or would ask for a parish.
Was it the case with those that you knew who were assistant priests with you, including Brendan Davey, that it took about 13 or 14 years from ordination until they had a parish?
But that was the case for everyone in those days.
Now, if you can turn to page...
I don't know, but I don't think there are any exceptions to that.
That it generally took that sort of time?
Yeah, it was just routine.
And it depended upon there being a vacancy?
That's right.
And if you were top of the ladder at the time of the vacancy, you got the job?
Yes, and I don't know whether there was any... whether it was an offer or a command.
But you applied on this occasion, so you clearly wanted it.
Yes, yes. Well, I knew I was coming up due for a parish, and I knew that Port Fairy would be coming up, so I would have applied for that one.
Now, you offended at Apollo Bay, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And you sought a transfer from Apollo Bay in about January 1975, having begun there in 74.
Yes.
And then you set out the reason on page 25 as why you left Apollo Bay. Now, do you see on page 25, the second line begins with no?
No, yes, I see that.
And the word no is in response to the question, you left Apollo Bay in the normal course of events. You say no and then give your explanation. Can I ask you to read that explanation, beginning with I left?
No, I left Apollo Bay because a fellow came to see me and he was drunk and brought a lot of grog and wanted to have a drink, and I got rid of him as quickly as I could. In the course of the conversation he said, "They are saying things down at the pub about you and kids," and I thought it was time to get out, so I put in for a transfer.
The question was then, talk about you interfering with kids, and you said yes.
Yes, there must have been talk about the town.
Was that the first time that it came to your attention that people were talking about you're offending the children in Apollo Bay?
Oh, I think so.
Did you tell the bishop that that had happened?
I don't know.
Well, in order for you to leave the parish earlier than you ordinarily would, you must have told someone in the church about why it was that you wanted to leave.
Well, that's reasonable, but I can't remember having formally put in for a transfer, or whether another chance for a parish came up shortly after and I put in for that. I can't remember the process there.
Bishop Mulcairns was the bishop at the time, wasn't he?
Yes.
Who was the Vicar General at the time?
I don't know, I can't remember that.
Do you remember who the bishop's secretary was at the time?
No, I know that Adrian McInerney was his secretary for some of the time, I think. No, I know that Adrian McInerney was his secretary for some of the time, I think.
Did you know Adrian McInerney well at this time in the mid-70s?
Diocese, and I didn't have any. I would have known him as a fellow priest in the diocese, and
when you put in a transfer, who did you tell that you wanted to transfer?
I don't know. I think the usual way would be to write to the bishop and consultors.
Do you remember doing that now in Apollo Bay?
No, I don't. No.
Now, you
I don't
say
know
that
how I did it.
this was the first time that somebody in the community had come to you complaining that you were interfering with children. That somebody in the community had come to you to get out of Apollo Bay quickly so that there was no formal action taken against you, didn't you?
Yes, I'd say so.
You'd be fearful, wouldn't you, that the fellow who came to see you or somebody else might go to the police?
Oh, yes.
So you'd need to get a transfer quite quickly for you might go to the police.
Oh, yes.
So in order to get a transfer more quickly than would ordinarily occur, you must have spoken to somebody in the diocese to achieve that.
Yes.
Do you remember now who you spoke to?
No, I don't remember at all.
The Vicar General was Frank Madden at the time.
Right.
You knew him, didn't you?
Yes, I know Frank.
You put in the transfer soon after you were told by the fellow who came to see you?
Well, I don't remember how long the move took.
Now, the diocesan consultors met about you and the next move that they would make with you in 1975. And tab 10 in front of you.
Is that from Apollo Bay, is it?
It is from Apollo Bay.
Right.
Have a look at tab 10. most of the same people who were at the previous meeting were at this meeting.
Yes.
And the first item of correspondence is letter from you, resale of 2 house blocks adjoining Star of Sea School.
Yes.
Now, what was that about?
There were 2 vacant blocks of land beside the Catholic Church. They were adjoining the Catholic Church, I think. Anyway, and the parish council, each parish had a parish council of local parishioners, and I think anything like sale of land generally comes through them. They ask that to raise some money or to better make use of land in the town, that if the church is holding on to blocks that aren't being used, that they be sold. Or there may have been an approach to the parish council by someone in the town to buy them.
And the parish where Star of the Sea School was Apollo Bay?
Apollo Bay, yes.
And then if you turn over to the second page of those minutes, the last item refers to appointments, and it notes that you were to become the parish priest at Inglewood. See that down at the bottom of the page?
Oh, parish priest, yes, yes.
Now, was it your understanding that when you were first appointed parish priest at Apollo Bay, that appointment was effectively for as long as you wanted it to be?
No.
Priest at Apollo Bay, that appointment was effectively for as long as you wanted it to be?
For a parish priest?
And you put in a transfer to leave much earlier than the 5-year period, didn't you?
Yes, yes.
And you were successful in that because in February 1975, you were given the parish of Inglewood.
Right.
It must have been, Mr. Ridsdale, that somebody in the diocese, including somebody on the consultors committee, must have asked you why it was that you wanted to leave Apollo Bay early. Now, who was it?
No, I don't remember.
Well, who was it that
I
you
don't know. I
spoke
don't
to?
remember anybody asking me.
Who was it that you spoke to explain why you wanted to get out of Apollo Bay?
I don't remember talking to anyone about it.
You don't remember talking to anyone, but do you agree that in order for you to have been successful in your transfer, you must have spoken to somebody who had a role in the decision-making about where you would go?
No, I don't necessarily follow that at all or agree with that.
So you say you put in a letter asking for the transfer?
Yes.
And that no one asked you why you wanted to transfer out of Apollo Bay when you had been there a relatively short time?
No, I don't remember anyone doing that, and if they had done, I would have cooked up some excuse, I suppose, some reason for getting out.
You wouldn't have told them the truth?
No.
Do you know whether the fellow who came to see you spoke to anyone else about you interfering with children?
No, I don't. No,
Did
I
anyone
don't.
else in Apollo Bay talk to you about interfering with children?
No, I don't think so.
So was he the only person who came to you with that complaint about your conduct?
That's what I said.
Now, you moved from Apollo Bay to Inglewood. That's right?
That's right.
Where was Inglewood geographically from Apollo Bay?
Inglewood was up towards Bendigo.
And Apollo Bay was further south?
On the coast.
Now, you were appointed to Inglewood in February 1975, and when you were in Inglewood, you offended against children, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Now, if I can ask you to go back to the transcript of your interview. Now, if I can ask you to go back to the transcript. Now, if you can go to page 27. Now, is your page 27 entirely blacked out or not?
No, the top of it's blacked out and the little bit at the bottom is blacked out.
Thank you. Do you see the part that isn't blacked out? There's a question
Yes.
to you. Well, you were fairly active there at Inglewood then, and then you gave an answer, which I'd like you to read out.
Yes, I was out of control, really out of control in those years.
Keep going.
These other ones, would they be from the school or altar boys or what? Well, I had a pool table and it was just known that anyone who wanted to come was welcome to come and play pool. There is no sense in pretending, I suppose, because if there was any kind of good motive about it being a drop-in centre, but it was the trap. You can see that now? Yes, I can see that now.
Now, you knew what you were doing were committing crimes against children, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
You'd known from the very beginning in 1961 when Bishop O'Collins spoke to you that what you were doing was committing criminal acts.
Yes.
Did you see them, in addition to criminal acts, as moral failures on your part?
Yes. Yeah, they were serious sins.
You thought they were serious sins because of the teaching you'd received in the seminary and beyond about what a sin was?
Yes.
Did Bishop O'Collins speak to you about your conduct in terms of being sins or being crimes?
I don't know. I don't remember the conversation, so I don't know what aspect he dealt with.
Were you fearful by the time you were in Inglewood of a family going to the police because of your offending against their children?
Was I fearful that it might happen?
Yes.
Well, yes, I suppose I would have been. I'd be fearful all the time.
Fearful of what?
I'd be fearful all the time of someone reporting me.
Were you also fearful that your being a priest would be taken away from you if anyone went to the police?
Yes, that would have been a big would have been a big incentive or whatever the word is that I can't think of.
What did you do as an assistant priest and as a parish priest when you were offending to keep it a secret?
Well, I would have made sure that I was in a situation where there was no one else around and I would have told the children to keep quiet about it.
Did you threaten the children as to what might happen if they didn't keep quiet?
I don't know whether I did or not, I may have.
You hurt those children, didn't you, Mr Ridsdale?
Yes, I did, I know that.
Is that an appropriate time, Your Honour?
Yes, very well. We'll take the luncheon adjournment.
All stand.